I'm the director of the Mise en Française, and I'm very happy to see so many of you here. This is the second film that we're showing in a series on Blackness in French and Francophone film. And so glad to see so many of you here to see Ousmane Sembène's La Noire 2, which we'll hear a little bit about in just a moment from Noire, who's the curator. But I wanted just to welcome you and tell you that we have 6 more screenings and 2 master classes coming up over the course of the next week and a half. We have 5 directors who are here from Paris and a curator and invited scholar who've all come to join us for this film series. All of the screenings will be followed by a discussion with, in many cases, the director and a curator, a guest moderator, and invited scholars from Colombia. So we hope that you'll be able to come back to more screenings in this series. I'd like to thank the School of the Arts and all of our other co-sponsors for joining us in this effort. Several of the screenings will take place at Lenfest Center, which is the new School of the Arts up Broadway. So please, if you are coming to another screening, make sure that you check where it's taking place before you end up in the wrong location. I'd like to thank Noire, who is the curator of this film series. This is the 3rd series she's done for us, and it's always such a great delight and pleasure to work with her, so you'll meet her in just a moment. Nora is a filmmaker and producer in addition to many other hats she wears, and we also have the pleasure of showing her latest film, Like Dolls All Lives, which will be showing at the Lenfest Center next Tuesday. So thanks again to Noire. And in preparing the series, Nora worked closely with M'Bissine Thérèse, who is here in the role of invited scholar and special guest moderator, and that's the role that she'll be playing this evening, joined by Bachir Diagne and M'Bissine Thérèse. So I'm going to just very briefly introduce our panelists now, and keep it short so that we have maximum time for discussion after the film. M'Bissine Thérèse is an associate professor in the English department at the Université de Tours in France, where she also did her PhD in English, specializing in U.S., African American, and Africana studies. She's also been part of the Columbia community several times as a PhD student, a fellow PhD student, and then she returned as a visiting lecturer in Africana studies at Barnard College, and as a visiting scholar in the history department and the Institute for Research in African American Studies. Her current projects include a book entitled Black Peoples, Black Gods, a comparative historical analysis of the emergence of Rastafari and the Nation of Islam, and Constructing Black France, a transatlantic dialogue, which I believe came out of a conference that was held at Columbia in 2009. And she will be joined by 2 wonderful colleagues here at Columbia, Suleiman Bachir-Diagne, who's a professor of French and philosophy at Columbia, and now also the director of the Institute of African Studies. I'm going to be much too brief to pay him full tribute, but just mention that his research interests include the history of philosophy, Islamic philosophy, African philosophy and literature, and the history of logic. And his books include The Ink of the Scholars, Reflections on Philosophy in Africa, Bergson postcolonial, L'élan vital dans la pensée de Senghor et de Mohamed Iqbal, and most recently, Open to Reason, Muslim Philosophers in Conversation with Western Tradition. We also have the honor to have Mamadou Diouf, who is the Leitner Family Professor of African Studies. His research interests include urban, political, social, and intellectual history in colonial and post-colonial Africa. And his books include, to name just a few, Tolerance, Democracy, and Sufis in Senegal, New Perspectives on Islam in Senegal, Conversion, Migration, Wealth, and Power, La construction de l'État au Sénégal, and Histoire du Sénégal, nos modèles islamo-wolof et ses périphéries. And both Professors Diagne and Diouf are originally from Senegal. Both studied in France and then went back to Senegal to teach for a time at the same university, and then both found their way to the United States and eventually to Columbia University. So they have Senegalese origin in common with the director of tonight's film, and so we're especially looking forward to what they have to say in their remarks afterwards. So I would just like to ask you to join me in thanking them for being here with us tonight and welcoming Nora. A few words of introduction before we screen the film. Thanks so much for coming.
Good evening, and thank you very much. This is incredible. It's a really full house, so I'm really happy. So Black Girl does not translate perfectly La Noire 2. La Noire 2 is more disturbing, very much more. La Noire 2 means either the black girl from, or more probably the black girl of, belonging to. Sembène was born in 1902. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Ousmane Sembène, because afterwards maybe you will talk about, the panel will talk about something else than cinema history. So just wanted to give you a little bit of insights about Sembène's career and the place of La Noire 2 in his journey, let's say. So Sembène was born a French citizen in 1923 in Casamance. The region, this Senegalese region, was under the French rule, and he died in Dakar in 2007. You might have read before coming to this screening that Sembène is very widely considered the father of African cinema, and that La Girl is the first African film that was produced by an African director, shot on location in Dakar, shot in French and Wolof, and that was internationally released and celebrated. Indeed, it was actually selected at the Cannes Festival in 1966, and won a very prestigious cinema award in France called the Prix Jean Vigo, which still exists. So it's why I wanted to show La Noire 2, the only classic film in this film series, because it's a debut film. In his first feature-length film, Sembène chose to embody resistance to neocolonialism through a female protagonist played by M'Bissine Thérèse Diop. She was almost a non-professional at the time, but she had taken some theater courses, and she was a seamstress. She continued playing, working in cinema, and after the 70s became again recovered her prior job. And La Noire 2 is the first of a long list of feature-length films which, often crafting and relying on multi-dimensional, complex, powerful female characters, explore oppression and the transformation of beings and or communities that resisting to oppression produces. And Sembène kept transforming, reshaping himself. After World War II, in which he was drafted as a tirailleur Senegalese in the French army, he stayed in France as a docker and a worker in the Citroën factory. Let me note that a few days ago, in 2018, the descendants of the Burkinabe tirailleurs who were invited to the anniversary celebration of the end of World War II were denied a visa by France because of the so-called risque migratoire, migratory risk in case they would like to stay in France. Sembène then becomes a famous novelist with novels that you might have read, such as Black Dogger, A Country My Beautiful People, and God's Bits of Wood. Then he writes a short fiction collection, Voltaïque, the French title is beautiful, in 1962, which comprises the short story La Noire 2, which he will later adapt. But when Senegal gains its independence, Sembène returns home, deciding that film is the most efficient storytelling tool for reaching his compatriots, which are mostly rural and illiterate population. And he spends a year in Moscow to study film. He directs 2 short films rapidly, and then so he directs La Noire 2, his first feature-length film. Sembène reflects on his intentions, and I would like to give a little space to his own voice. He gave an interview in '68. For me, cinema is a means of political action. But on this matter, I should add 2 points. On the one hand, I do not seek to make a cinema of signs, a cinéma de pancarte, a militant cinema. On the other, I don't think it's possible to change a given situation with only one film. Simply, I believe that if we, African filmmakers, make a series of films oriented in the same direction, we will be able to change, ever so slightly, the present forces by developing the awareness of the people. I like Brecht and try to follow his example. He says this 2 years after directing La Noire 2. A few years afterwards, he writes, a film, and this is, I think, for us, a film is a debate, not only a film. Cinema must be a night school, it's an evening. Cinema must be a night school for people who wish to reflect. They must find elements of reflection in order to forge ahead. every day we talk about film. We go to schools, every high school has a room. We call it a cinema club. We call it une salle de réflexion, a room of reflection. We come, we present a film, and we discuss it. We go beyond the frame of the movie. We talk about the bourgeoisie, how one becomes a beggar in the country, we talk about peasants, and so on and so forth. This lends to discussion a quality of concreteness, and even criticism aimed at the director. Every month, twice a month, I have to strip naked, je passe sous la douche in front of the crowd. So what we're doing here is alive. Let me finish on something that is dear to me in this film series, the voice. In 1966, the off-camera voice, la voix off, that expresses a flow of consciousness and integrity, is a common filmic tool, from Sacha Guitry to Orson Welles, but Sembène is not paying tribute to this formal tradition. He's, to me, responding to the dominant use of the off-camera voice, in English I think it's off-stage commentary, in contemporary documentaries. Who abundantly uses off-stage commentary at the time, and with whom he had quite tense conversations, is Jean Rouch, that he accused to look at Africans like insects. Sembène offers a counter-ethnology, and it's based on the voice. In La Noire 2, the voice is not off. I'd like to use the term of Serge Danet at the time, or a decade afterwards. It's not a voix off, it's a voix through, a through voice. Through camera voice that works, labors through opacities, complexities, but that expresses precisely a dynamic and a resistance. I'm sure the voice you'll hear tonight will also resonate on Saturday afternoon at 2, when you will view Ouvrir la Voix, Speak Up, by Amandine Gué, and Le Pays à l'envers, by Sylvaine Dampierre on next Wednesday, in which, Le Pays à l'envers, Upside Down Country, in which Sylvaine Dampierre uses an off-camera eye to search for the origins of her surname. Enjoy the screening and please silence yourself first.
To see again Sembène, because there is a cameo here. The écrivain public is Sembène Ousmane with the pipe. And that's also how the image of him that I remember, because he was a friend of my uncle. They fought together for national languages. We might be saying a few words about that with my uncle Pate, whom Mamadou knows very well because he's his uncle too. Something that I add to what Charlie was saying is that we are related as well. And yeah, so that was the image of Sembène that I had in mind when I was a kid, and I was seeing him with my uncle Pate. Of course, I've seen him later on, but that was really, this was a kind of a movie of reminiscence for us. It moved me a lot to see it again.
Thank you. Mamadou Diouf, same question for you. First reactions.
Yeah, I was also impressed by the song. And fascinating thing that it is a song in my father's language. But he didn't speak his own language, which means that I don't understand it except this part of Bashir translated. But another thing which seems to me important, about the song is it's not a traditional song. It's a very modern song of the independence movement. And what makes it important for Sembène is that he's trying to build a kind of national music, a kind of national song. And he relates on one hand to a Mandingo kora player, Sunjuru Sissoko, and on the other on Hadi Diouf. We share the same last name. And the interesting thing is how Sembène is trying to tell a story, which is the story of an urban woman, at the same time imagining a kind of space which is much more Pan-African, and trying to figure out how do you build something. Is why the character is playing, the fact that the central space in which these young people are congregating is called a popular school, show what is behind a project of a movie. And what is moving for me is, I knew Sembène very well. We are from quote unquote. He used to say that the same ethnic group, and he used to terrorize me. And the interesting thing, here he is 43, because he was born in 1923. And for me, what is interesting is to see him so young. Because when I began interacting with him, he was in his 70s. And he was very interesting. And looking at him and thinking about what he has done and trying to reinterpret this movie is something for me which is quite fascinating.
Thank you for both your answers. So perhaps we should begin, as Mamadou just said, about how in 2018 we are looking back at what Ousmane Sembène has done. Perhaps we should begin by the context. What should we know so that we can get perhaps a clearer vision of Black Girl, La Noire 2, we're in the mid-1960s. Maybe we can talk about these years, maybe we can talk about the previous years, and globally, how can we contextualize both Sembène and this movie?
I think a way of contextualizing is understanding what has happened at the end of the colonial rule, when actually the first generation of African filmmakers were trained in France. And what they were basically trying to do between roughly 1950 and 1955 was to shoot movies and to film Africa, as they say. And they were denied. But it was not only them, but French filmmakers of also the 50s, like Vautier, who had made Afrique 50, or right, René and Chris Mark has done Les Statues Meurent aussi. These are movies which are very, very important movies, which are anti-colonial movies. The French decided to ban. And this is very important. And the two first African movies, Sub-Saharan, are movies which are shot in France, not outside. And one which is very well known was made by Sembène's friend, Ousmane about African living in France, but they are not able to film back in Africa. It's at independence that things began changing. Sembène was able to do Borom Saret, which is still considered as the first black movie, but it's not true. You have two movies before Sembène, but Borom Saret is the kind of model for African movie directors. And the interesting thing is a film shot in Africa. It's about Dakar. It's about colonial urban policy. So for me, what is interesting with La Noire 2 is La Noire 2 is shot outside Senegal. This is a kind of twist which is quite interesting, and I'm sure that Sembène did it on purpose. And the interesting aspect is it relates on the whole discussion about migration. This movie has almost 40 years ahead of the kind of discussion which is going on. It's about the consequences of cultural encounter. And the kind of contrast is made, the musical contrast, the clothing contrast, the food contrast, even the drink contrast. And these are things which I think which remain the most important messages of this movie and made it such a contemporary movie.
Thank you, Amadou. Bashir, do you want to add on the context?
One element of context. Let's look at Borom Saret was the first one he did. And Borom Saret, it is important to remember that Borom Saret is about, it's a tale of two cities, one might put it that way. Because it is about the division of Dakar between the European city near the the harbor, and the Medina, the indigenous city, which is something that we see in this movie. I mean, when she applies to be a maid, she goes to around the Place de l'Indépendance that we see in the end when she is with her boyfriend, and the other side, also the indigenous city. And in this case, it is interesting to see that when they are in Dakar, you have the same kind of images you had with Borom Saret, the division between the European city and the indigenous city. And when they are in France, the two words actually collide, because you are living in an apartment. She doesn't have her villa that she has in Senegal anymore, where the maid would come and then leave and go back to where she belongs. She is supposed to be part of their own universe. I mean, living in an apartment in Antibes means you are sharing the same bathroom and so on and so forth. And she's going to die from that kind of collision of the two universes. So reading this movie along with Borom Saret is interesting from that standpoint. And yeah, the role played by the mask is also very important, obviously, in this context of the mask. Something that we haven't paid attention to, and probably it is important to let the audience remember that image. The boyfriend, when they are at the boyfriend's house, the context is also, let's remember, the early 60s, mid-60s. This is the time of what happened in Congo.
The Congo, we clearly
and
see
the Lumumba picture with the word Uhuru, meaning independence, which is the name of the current president of Kenya. And remember also, when you look at the word Uhuru, remember the play by Aimé Césaire, A Season in the Congo, where Uhuru is used preferably to independence, because independence pronounced dependence in the local Congolese language was just false independence, neo-colonialism replacing actually colonialism, as opposed to Uhuru. And now you have the same kind of play that Césaire played in the movie, because when they are together, the boyfriend and Joanna, they are on Place de l'Indépendance, when we see Place de l'Indépendance, and that would be opposed to the image of Uhuru in the bedroom of the... So I'm insisting on these symbolic aspects because I was saying this because we watched a movie, we discussed a movie in a seminar that I'm right now teaching, and many of my students are here. And we were looking at the way in which Sembène, having very little money to make this movie, he had very small budgets, budgetary restrictions and constraints, having to do also with censorship, because he had hard time putting together the budget for this movie. He uses the very constraints as the aesthetic of his movie. The constraints become the aesthetic of his movie. So his movies are very heavy on symbolism without being, too heavy, on the contrary. I mean, you do not pay attention, but you see many things, and he's investing more in the symbolism of his movie because actually he has to go around a certain number of constraints. One of the constraints being here that the movie was shot silently, and then it is in the post-production that they had to dub them and use voices of other people. He could not just bring the actress to Paris during the post-production to have her own voice. So she had to use, and you see her in the credits, he had to use Toto Vicente to give the voice. And somehow he made the best of it, because this indirect, the off voice that Nora mentioned earlier is something that makes the beauty of the movie. So the way in which he used the constraints to turn them into aesthetic aspects of the movie is also some element of context that we should emphasize, which is very important.
I had another question in mind, but now that you mentioned it, I'll ask my question later on. What can be said about this use of voices and those silences, and the fact that Joanna almost never speaks. We hear her thoughts. It made me think about Erema Colon by Marie Condé and the character of Véronica Mercier, whose thoughts we read throughout the movie, but who almost never utters a word in the novel itself. Here we hear Joanna in French, sometimes saying yes or no, but we don't hear our own voice. And you have enlightened us about the technical difficulties and the financial difficulties that Sembène Ousmane had to deal with. But what does it produce ultimately in terms of the representation of this character, who seems to be a doer? She does the cooking, she works, she commits suicide, but she doesn't seem to be speaking a lot. We don't hear a lot. So maybe your thoughts about
I think it's an important question, precisely because the way in which Sembène engaged with, if you want, social relation within, actually, in the relation between people, is much more related to space. Is why you don't need voices, really. The off voices are important because it allows Sembène to have a kind of much more magical way of using language, of using it in a kind of very new way. And I think that La Noire is the kind of perfect illustration of his approach, because of the, Joanna repeating the same time, it's for kitchen, for living room, for bathroom, and etc., and my room. And if you look also at the mother, when she is in the campaign, in the middle of the campaign, the way of interacting is very different. He moves inside. And I think Bashir is right. The way in which Sembène actually was able to deal with the constraint. And this book is interesting because when, in 1960, at independence, the French changed their policy and decided they created 2 offices at the Ministry of Cooperation, in particular the Bureau du Cinéma, the Office of Cinema, to help Africa to produce their own movies. They, apply, they submit a script, and the decision will be made. And La Noire 2 is the only one which was rejected on the basis of the script. It's the only one. It had never happened after. But the French decided, when Sembène was able to produce it, they decided to buy the rights. And actually this is why he was able somehow to have the voices. But, after La Noire 2, Sembène decided to no longer work with them. And I think he's probably the only Francophone movie director who had not been financed by the French. But it's true that aesthetically, he was able to create his own world. And as Bashir was saying, to be able to do many things because of this. And for me, the mask has always been an enigma because of Senghor. Senghor's relation with the mask. I have not been able to understand what he was trying to do with his mask, because he was not a mask person. He was much more someone painter than in the mask.
Thank you. Bashir, a few words about the silencing, voicing.
Yeah, on the voice, I mean, you remember that at one point, Madame is asked by her friends if Joanna speaks French, and she says no. So the voice would be the best way to sort of solve that kind of paradox. She could not definitely be speaking if she doesn't speak the language. So we, as the audience, we are supposed to believe that when that voice is expressing her interior thoughts, she is thinking in her own language. Now, which language is that? Probably Wolof, because all Senegalese speak Wolof unless you ask them. But not necessarily, because her last name is Gomis. So Gomis, her original language would be Manjak, probably. So that's one aspect. But the most important aspect is that you have two types of silence. The silence of resistance that she opposes to Madame at one point. She decides she's not speaking anymore. She has this look and so on. And also the silence of the mother. So that is the same silence. The mother doesn't say, I don't want your money, who are you, blah, blah, blah. She just looks at the money and turns around and leaves. So you have both the voice, the internal voice, which is supposed to be in another language, her own language, but then we have to believe that it is not French. Now, I mentioned Sembène's permanent combat for African languages, and the move he made from writing to cinema, and that has been studied by my good friend Valérie Berthier, who is here. I want to acknowledge her because she has written a book on Sembène, which is coming out in January, with Présence Africaine. And the move he made towards cinema was also a way of fighting for African languages, because he said, considering cinema as l'école du soir, that Nora mentioned, the best way to make African languages languages of creation and science would be through cinema. That's where it is easier done. And in that sense, La Noire 2 is a transition towards his next movie, which is going to be Mandat, the Mandat. And the Mandat is shot in French and shot in Wolof, not dubbed. You do have two movies, one in French, one in Wolof. So he's making his transition towards his cinema, which will be after that only in African languages, except Charlie, for obvious reasons, because this is about the French art, and Charlie is in Petit Nègre, as you know.
But perhaps to continue what you just said, Bashir, what can we make in this instance with Black Girl, or what can we make of the fact that we are talking about the meeting of Sembène Ousmane and Ousmane Sembène? That is to say, the short story that is part of the collection Voltaic, and the movie that is a cinematic adaptation of this short story. Even if we're not talking about particularly African languages, what can be said about the storytelling, the text versus images, and what do you make of that?
I think he was aware of a completely different way of telling a story, taking, if you want, a perspective which is African, or a perspective which is Western. And one thing which has always been very, very strong in his belief, I am a historian, and Sembène ate historians, because he believed that they are flattening stories. They are not able to actually reflect on the very fact that history is very unstable. And his term in French was to say that historians are chronophages, they eat time. And I think what he's always trying to do is to tell histories with disruption. And disruption which are by referring to music, by referring, as I was saying, to space, and by referring to ways in which people are interacting. It's like with, boy compromise. How you include it in the narration becomes a kind of very interesting aspect. But he was not necessarily someone attracted by oral tradition. Sembène is a modern director. and he wants modernity. He's a Marxist. He thinks that change is very important. And I think it's why his references to women is so central. Because for him, you know, then if you go to Got Bits of Wood, he's the most revolutionary character is the person. He's going to the extreme. And he's doing the same thing in his way of telling the story.
He's a fantastic storyteller. An aspect I like in his cinema is the acceleration. I mean, the way in which he plays on time. You have, sometimes he takes his time, and actually something that not many people know, you had color in the original movie. In particular, the arrival of Joanna in Antibes, and when she is driving with Monsieur, and Monsieur is saying, La France, c'est beau, c'est joli.
Love the country.
That was in color. And Sembène wanted to have La Vie en Rose, the France that Monsieur wants to show to the maid, and then as soon as she gets in the apartment and there is this huis clos in the apartment, things become black and white. And that is the kind of thing that Sembène wanted to do in the original version of the movie, a little bit like in that wonderful Italian movie, Nous nous sommes tant aimés, by yeah. Okay, but you see, you have a movie in color and in black and white, and at one point it becomes color. In this case, it was color and then it becomes black and white. And when Sembène had all the problems that Mamadou just mentioned, he had to shorten the movie. He had to make it 1 hour or less in order to have the authorization to publish it. And so he suppressed but there is still in the archive, Cinématographie de France, that version with some color. And so that is the time when he takes his time, he describes things, and also the life of Joanna is really boring. And the way in which it is boring, but it's always kitchen, bathroom, etc., he takes his time. And then toward the end, you see this acceleration. In 5 minutes, she's dead, he's back, and his mother just say no to the money. Very quickly, very fast. That is the art of Sembène at its best, and I mean, that's what is so fantastic.
But the disillusion, the désamour between Joanna and friends and the family happens very quickly in the movie, right off the car, I want to say. Right after the long ride, beautiful friends and Antibes, couldn't we say that it's as if the minute she enters that closed space where both worlds that you described earlier collide and no longer have the space to breathe from one another, that instant dissolution occurs. So that's actually a very rapid rhythm at the beginning of the movie.
Absolutely, and this is when the shift happens in black and white. And as you say, yes, that is the last time she was in Antibes. After that, we know that she goes to the grocery, but we never see her out of the apartment.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's also because, and Sembène is remarkably showing here, is that France is a fiction. And for Joanna, France has always been a fiction. She doesn't know what is it. Nobody has ever told her what France is. At a point when she is in bed with her boyfriend has very much. I think it's
very much. We also see images of Elle magazine and
absolutely. And it's a fiction which is working, that the colonized has no idea, except France is beautiful. I think it's happened to us. The idea you have to, I think for our generation, France was, it was Normandy, it was keys, because of Senegal. The only thing you need, and you show up there, you say, you have real people living
So what was the disillusion for you, for your generation, as you said?
You know, for my generation, it was the very fact that you see people who were poor, you see people who were not white, which was something we didn't imagine. For us, France, everybody was white. And you have, you know, cows around, and you arrive at the beach, you see no cow, no nothing. And I think it's because France is literally an idea. And it's what Sembène is trying to do, that it is an idea, and it is a revolution more than something which is concrete.
And that's something that happens, I think, very clearly on in the scene shot at the memorial for World War II. So again, we have another fiction, another narrative that seems to be dangerous, that actually endangers Joanna, who is told by her boyfriend, get off that wall, this is dangerous. So maybe we can talk a bit about this narrative, this dangerous fiction that absorbs the mind, the psyche of the colonial subjects, or very recent post-colonial subjects, and the relationship of Sembène Ousmane with the national narrative, the military, we know the works dedicated to the tirailleurs Senegalese. So I think that goes back to what Mamadou was saying at the very beginning, the questioning of migration, but also the questioning of this relationship between, in this case, a Senegalese black girl to France. So what can be said about that, these dangerous fictions?
Right. It is about danger when she is on top of the monument or more, but it is also what the boyfriend says is also that you should not, because obviously you have to pay respect to the people who are dead here, and that this rapprochement which is made between those who went to France because they were supposed to go to war. This was the first time they went there, so they did not have even the luxury of thinking, oh, France might be beautiful, etc. You have the uniform, you get from your village, and you go direct to the champ de bataille. That is something different from her case. So I think that that image of her being on top of the monument or more was a kind of very light way of considering what it means to travel to France, and we were reminded here that other people did exactly the same kind of travel, but they traveled to go to war, to kill and die, and most of them died, of course. And I think that is where the danger of the illusion resides as well. And she's going to pay that illusion of the beautiful France, the beautiful Côte d'Azur. The choice was Côte d'Azur, not Paris, for example, in this case, because Côte d'Azur is supposed to be precisely the ultimate, dream of having Nice Antille, as Monsieur proudly says.
On the same topic, these dangerous fictions, those dangerous ideas, who seem to absorb certain populations and ultimately kill them.
I think what Sembène is trying to convey is a very fact, and it's really the image when she is on top of a monument or more, and when she kills herself, it's about these people who died but for which country? This is a very, very important question. And again, it's the idea of France. When she prepared to travel, she's singing, I'm going to France. And she had this crisis, this conflict with her boyfriend, because of the inability to go beyond that. And I think what Sembène is saying, which is, you have to go through the experience in order to know exactly what is going on, or to just revolutionarily cut away from the idea. It's why language becomes important, trying to speak word, living in the country instead of...
In that case, what can we make of the boyfriend who utters these words, these warnings, from Senegal, and he hasn't traveled, not that we see in the movie. So how can he be so aware, so enlightened? Is it about the education? Is it about the political Pan-African consciousness?
It's really the political Pan-African consciousness. It's the possibility to recover something which has been lost. And Sembène is really a historian of recovery, of rebuilding a narrative. And it's what he's interested in. How do you build a narrative? And how do you make it credible in order precisely to erase illusions? And this is something which is, I think he does it very well with La Noire. It's why La Noire is a kind of turning point. Because after he will be much more into a discourse, much more political. Here it's really a way of saying, we are independent, we can invent a new narrative. For him, the idea is inventing the narrative. It's why you have Lumumba there, why it's about Uhuru, but it's also why it's about this popular school where all the young people are congregated to learn something which is new. It's not only a rupture, from colonial rule, but it's also a rupture from tradition. I think we usually forget the second dimension. Sembène is not recovering something which is tradition. He's really inventing something new.
But when we're talking about this popular school, l'école populaire, are we talking about young people or are we talking about young men?
But this is a very interesting question for probably the most feminist African creative ever existed. Sembène's movies, Sembène's novels are dominated by women characters. And he literally believed that the only way to change Africa is through women. This is something which is, and he had never drawn any fault in relation to that, the idea. So it's true that, at the period, and you even see it in La Noire, at the point she's close to being married. This is 66, where even, Western filmmakers are not showing women. This is also something which is a part of promoting the discourse, which is for him a revolutionary discourse, which will allow African societies to go beyond, if you want, the constraint and obstacle of tradition. So Sembène is not only an anti-colonialist artist, he is also an anti-traditional, and basically it's about, his feminist understanding of African societies.
I wanted to go back to some of the notions that you have both mentioned so far, including that of recovery and also Sembène Ousmane's management of time and rhythm. There seems to be, and also rupture, there seems to be a breaking point in this movie, a breaking point that translates even in the, let's say, in the style, the hairstyle and the clothing style of Joanna. There is one point where the resistance becomes more visible, even though it remains silent, where she changes clothes and she changes the way she styles her hair. What can you say about this particular moment? What did she recover or not recover? Or how do we go through, the look of this character to embody and to portray this rupture, this resistance, this assertion?
I think you're right. Her very clothes also are very meaningful in terms of the resistance. I mean, her insistence on having these very unpractical shoes that she insists on wearing, and the insistence of Madame that on the contrary she takes off her shoes and just behave and dresses like a maid as well. And that is an interesting aspect of her resistance as well.
Mamadou, perhaps on the other moments when she removes the wig, when she resorts to, when she goes back to her traditional African clothing, when she's not worried, no longer worried about the heels, right? What happens? What happened? Yes, it was natural.
I think at the point she had always had a kind of double nature. Because if you look at all the moments she is with her boyfriend, she's always wearing African clothes, never. And when she's arriving in France, her dream is to buy wigs, buy clothes, and shoes. And these are what, for her, finally became the kind of prison, like the apartment. So, moving from that, it's a kind of emancipatory moment where she has already decided that she was going to liberate herself, and she's killing herself.
So are you saying that the nappy movement did not invent anything? Do we have more time, or some people already have questions? Yes, also maybe we'll open up the questions. Yes, we're going to open up to questions. Otherwise, I can comfortably converse with you for hours. So let's share. And we have a first question at the back.
Thank you. In the reference to the sister coming over there to France, when she first.
Okay, thank you. The movie was quite interesting. Gave me a whole lot of different kind of feelings, and I saw things in a whole lot of different ways. One thing I noticed when she came over there to France, she suffered immediately culture shock, and she never got over that culture shock. And I thought that was sort of bad when she took her life like that, when they offered her that, when they gave her the money that she earned, underpaying her also. She should have used that money to go and see the town like she wanted to see. But I thought that she said that the lady would never see her again, her mistress, her employee. She should have used that money to go and see the town instead of taking her life. And then when she got back home, her mother didn't want the money, so then her whole experience over there was just a waste of a life. And then it also shows also Europeans how their view of life is. I didn't see no happiness nowhere around. I saw them always arguing, smoking, drinking, no attention to the children. I guess all of that would make anybody want to commit suicide. When you come from an environment where family is the big thing, love, family, children, warmth, love, talking to each other, sharing with each other, when you see this sanitized kind of cold environment, you said upstairs, they were always fighting, that would drive anybody to want to commit suicide. Goodness.
Thank you for your comments.
For Marvel, refusing to take the money is another story, because she committed suicide.
Yes.
And because she committed suicide, she does not accept to have anything to do.
Exactly.
Because you don't commit suicide. And this is very interesting. And it's also, Sembène's way of referring to slavery.
Exactly. Yes.
Taking the money is accepting that she had sold Joanna to the white master.
Yes.
So these are the two references Sembène is mixing to explain that. For Joanna, she cannot go and visit the city. She doesn't know. What she knows is the kitchen, her room, the bathroom.
Yes.
She knows nothing else. She goes to the grocery store. It's the only reference which is made of what she's able to, what she's able to do.
And perhaps to add on that, and before we move to the next question, another reference to slavery might be the the auction sale, the square where the maids wait for potential clients who come and who look at them and who pick them, who they're not touching them, but we can imagine them touching them and at least assessing the one who's going the fittest for their own needs. So that's another example. We have another question somewhere at the back. So
I had a question about imagery and the use of photography specifically in the film. So the first is just a general question about how Sembène kind of produced a particular aesthetic of starkness, but also how he deployed the photograph for her as a site to kind of transport her back into this moment of tension, but also memory when she's with her boyfriend, collapsing the plot in a particular way, but also kind of offering character development. And so I was just wondering your take on how he's commanding images, not only narrative.
Photograph is something that he uses very much also in his movies. I mentioned earlier Charoy Kalanka. In Charoy, the sergeant who is married to a French woman, actually, who stayed in France, has a picture of his family. And the only reference to that family, and every time he reminisces his happiness with his wife and kids is through the picture. Same thing here. The way in which a picture triggers memory, brings back the sweet memories as Tina Turner's song goes, is some constant in Sembène's movie. Yeah, it's very important here. And we start with the scene actually when they took that picture. This is when they had this kind of fight when they were taking that picture. It was a way of saying goodbye, don't forget me, keep that picture, remember me, and now when Monsieur looks at the picture, it's a very interesting thing. He just realizes that, well, she has a life. Someone back home loves her, and she's a real person, and there is love in her life, and she's not just the lady.
And the interesting thing is how actually the picture is never outside the suitcase. She's always keeping it in the suitcase. And I think it's the kind of reference and quote which is fascinating.
Hello.
the microphone will come to you.
It isn't necessary.
It's being recorded, so it's better if you use the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Many theories have been shown in this movie. First of all, remember Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death." And Blanchette, for the French people, the teachers or those who are French, isn't Blanchette a goat? Remember the children?
Can you use the microphone?
The children's story of Blanchette, the goat who went off, that she didn't want the cord around her neck, and she got away, and she died for not having, not showing having liberty. So this theme that he had was often portrayed, but not only that, but there was a religious theme also in the mask. That religious theme went back to ancient Africa in the mask. And the mask was given almost a living quality. Even at the end, when the child wore the mask and the European was running running away, I mean the Frenchman, he was running away from the mask as though he thought that it would harm him. So that was also a hard thing I saw. What do you think about that?
I think a reply is expected. What are your thoughts on perhaps spirituality? Your understanding, Mamadou already stated that the mask remained an enigma, right? But as Bashir, you didn't protect yourself.
Well, we have to remember that masks were called, by the way, all these art objects were called fetishes, with this idea that they were less art than they were religious objects, some kind of magical, dark, black magical object. And this is how Monsieur perceived this mask at the end. He is really being chased by the mask and the boy. And in that case, the mask is not something that he is actually collecting, because he's a collector. He has many beautiful African things, and he appreciated the mask. He's the one who told his wife it looks like the real thing, and you wonder where the kid actually got the mask. And so the moment when the mask has become now something something he is afraid of, that is probably the whole trajectory of the movie, from a gift to this mysterious thing that is chasing him.
And anything to say about the reference to La Chèvre de Monsieur Seguin? I wouldn't know how to translate that in English, but that French traditional, or perhaps European traditional tale about this, I don't know, how can you say?
Lavage. Blanchette.
Yeah, she's a chèvre.
Chèvre.
Okay, yes.
Oh, chèvre.
The story is about this, I don't know, a unruly goat, and she's a female goat who doesn't listen to the instructions and who was supposed to stay in the barn, and who escapes the barn, leaves the rest of the goats, and is killed by a wolf. So what you just mentioned is that you saw a reference of this theme of the unruly character who has not heeded the instructions and who pays a price and a very costly, price for not listening to. Am I translating you well? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have anything to say.
But Sembène will celebrate the unruly character. It's exactly something which is part of his way of thinking. And about her mask, the interesting aspect is that her mother is always throwing it away.
Yes.
It is also an aspect of the movie which is very important to keep in mind. Because Sembène has this mask in a society in which they don't have it. The Wolof don't have mask. They lost it, I don't know when. So it's not a reference which is necessarily associated to the way in which people are thinking. And I assume that she has a Mandak name, but her mother seems to be Muslim, which is again, this kind of Sembène mixing these different things. But Sembène didn't have really a kind of education, which is the classical education we had. So his references were mainly references from the tradition or things he himself invented. And he invented a lot of traditions.
Do we have another question? Yes.
First of all, I just want to say thank you guys for having this panel. I think it's always really good to hear you guys and see what you guys are thinking. Because after watching a movie like this, everyone's thinking different things. So I'll ask you guys a much simpler question. My question for you guys is, so there are two titles of the movie, right? The Black Girl and the French one? La Noire, right? So La Noire, it translates to the black girl from, or the black from, right? And in English, right, it's the black girl. There's a big discrepancy there. What do you guys think is the cause of that? What do you think it means? Like, what, just any thoughts, any ideas on it?
Translation, and the stakes. What is at stakes?
Well, we're dealing here with an untranslatable. La Noire is either you say untranslatable or meaningless, and on purposely so. What does it mean? You know, I mentioned it with the point de suspension, and so it could be genitive objective or genitive subjective here. Like the black girl of belonging to, or the black girl from, and he left it open. That in French, it's very difficult to understand what La Noire means. It could mean anything. But black girl is too precise. That's what the problem with translation. I guess you have to say something in English. But black girl definitely doesn't translate La Noire.
How about black girl owned by?
Yeah.
Well, then you would be deciding on the meaning of good.
Yes.
That's it, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So that's better, but you still do not keep the open.
And I think that at the same time, within a colonial context, it makes sense. Because the colonizer used to say, my colonized. La Noire is about this very expression. When the colonizer is able to say, I know them so well that I can possess them. So when we talk about more Senegalese, my Senegalese. And I think Sembène plays on that, on the idea of ownership, the ownership of the colonized by the colonizer.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for I'm really enjoying all this movie. And I just have one question about the name. Like, I noticed in the movie, like, we barely know the name of the character, except for Joanna. And I think the little child, one, I'm not sure, and maybe the mask as well, but we barely know the name of anyone else. And I would like to know how can understand that.
It's just the Israeli.
Mamadou, Bashir. Why don't we?
Because I think that one, again, it's about the identity of the colonizer. The identity of the colonizer here is to be the he, monsieur, or madame, or she. What it happened is a way of erasing an identity which is specific. They become the reference of the man and the reference of the woman, which enable her to invent, to always look at the subaltern as something which is without humanity. And it's really a way of redefining what is a human being. A human being is you. So you don't need a name for that because you are the absolute reference.
Bashir, you want to add on that?
That is true.
Another question? Or
Okay.
We all enjoyed it a lot. I wanted to know what you would say in response to masks serving as a proxy for, I guess, the black body. Because we see like the violation of the black body throughout the movie. We see the man who comes up and kisses her without any consent. We see how she's not able to dress herself the way she wants to, and then at the end, of course, she takes her life. And the mask has value throughout the movie, but then at the end, it seems like it's almost discarded. So I wanted to know like, what you would think in response to that.
Answer.
Let me propose something, which is the theatrical aspect of things emphasized by the mask. We know that the masks play a huge role in theater. That is their main function in theater. In tragedies, usually you have characters wear masks. And here, in this particular case, the mask sort of travel throughout the movie and with ownership without being, worn by anybody. Nobody is really, except the kid. It goes all the way back and comes back to the child. So the mask as the symbol of the black body, yeah, I think your reading is interesting in this case. But also the mask as the symbol of some kind of interchangeable subject. It is, it travels throughout different characters owned by the madame, who is very happy with her mask. She even forgets that actually it was given to her. So Joanna has a right to it. And ultimately, being one who owns it is the kid. And that is the final image also of the movie, because that child is supposed to be the future of the country. So that would be a reading that goes along the lines of what you said, and which is, I think, important.
And at the same time, Sembène is still making it a commodity, because Joanna kept saying, I bought it 50 francs.
And if I may say, before moving to what would be our last question, I think that we're talking about, or witnessing the violation of black bodies, but also the violation of space and privacy. Joanna's door is always open, or anybody can come in, the monsieur, the madame, the kid. So I think that it's beyond the body, it's also perhaps the intimacy also is violated. So last question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
As has been said before, thank you so much for your inquisitive commentary. One thing that I particularly noticed was this almost constant and consistent attack on Joanna by the white woman. And one thing is the fact that she was calling her lazy, saying that she's an animal at one point. Yet it seemed as though the dad, Monsieur, would come to her almost a white savior complex, like he was the one who's like, I need to go back to Dakar and give the money to the mother and doing all of that. Can you all speak to that, highlight that a little? How do we reconcile that idea with the fact that her as a black woman being within this household is more so because women are more likely to take care of household affairs, so the mom felt more likely to attack her, or was it more attributable to the dad's indifference? Does it have a greater meaning? What do you all think?
I think it's an important question, because you can interpret the movie just looking at this fight between two women. And this is also something very important in ways English Sembène is constructing gender. And basically the white woman she's unhappy. She's bored. And Joanna became a kind of scapegoat for her. this is where she can actually exercise, the person on which she can exercise power. The man is completely disconnected. He enjoys his life, he smokes, drinks, and has literally no responsibility. Because the responsibility is not to try to save, quote unquote, Joanna. It's try to deal with the unhappiness of his wife. And I think Sembène also showed one thing, which is that, because Joanna kept saying, she was very nice to me in Dakar.
Right.
What has happened in Antibes is she is in the same prison. She is unhappy. In Dakar, she has a villa, she has space, she has a cook, and she has a person who is taking care of her laundry. So she's happier there than being in Antibes. And Joanna became her punching ball.
But should you want to add on?
Yeah, on that, I think there is a hint in the movie that Monsieur might be interested in her. It's very light, but there is that aspect of things. So the relationship between Madame and Joanna becomes then a relationship of rivalry, and that is an aspect, I think, that is there. There is a look that the husband had, Monsieur had, at one point when she is going to have a nap. Maybe also that was part of his look when he saw that picture with Joanna's boyfriend and so on. So that might be an aspect of it, and I think that we should be looking at that as well. Now, since this was the last question, now I come back to the mask. I think I have something more interesting to say about the mask. And I'm going to propose this to my good friend M'Bissine Thérèse, who is one of the responsible for the restitution of African art decided by Macron. You know that President Macron said that African art that was taken from Africa should be given back. And you have two scholars who are right now, they have finished their report. And it's going to be given to President Macron, M'Bissine Thérèse and Benedict Savoy, who are working on this. And probably we can think that Sembène might have had in mind also that aspect of things. You know that in L'Afrique Fantôme by Michel Léris, he tells the story of how many African art objects have been stolen, taken from the continent and brought to museum in Europe. Either they were bought for just nothing, a few francs, because people who took them thought that it would reduce their guilt to give a few francs for what they were taking, although they knew that this was valuable objects because they were religious objects in the first place. So this aspect probably could be also seen as being part of the meaning of the mask. I did give it to you, but actually now I want it back because I've seen who you are, living with you in the same apartment. I know that you are not that kind woman that my mother described in her letter and so on and so forth, so I want my art objects back. So that would be probably one message of the mask that makes more sense that I think in the context of the movie.
I use my privilege as moderator to go back to your question and I'll close. I think that you've raised a very important point, and that is, you're talking about patriarchy. And I think that this confined space, the apartment in continental France, is comparable to the dynamics and the failed solidarities between black and white women on, the plantations in the Americas and in the rest of the world. So that is the impossibility of being in solidarity because of differing interests, to the interest of the men, who then can appear as totally unresponsible, as even kind, even though we do have the sexual tensions, the rivalry between the two women, but also the clear understanding by the white woman that if Joanna is not doing her part, she will be doing the part. So one of them has to survive. And survival explains some of the reactions. So of course, unhappiness, but also déclassement, that is to say, this woman in hexagonal France does not have the same standard of living that she would have in colonial Africa. But the clear understanding that because of the social structure and the economic structure, it's going to have to be one or the other, right? To the benefit of the man who simply does not have anything to do. One is the main benefit, he collects all the benefits from this situation. Seamlessly.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.